The beautiful woman was invited to a party by a wealthy heir. However, the dance floor was filled with vampires. Looking around, the demons were dancing wildly. The woman was scared and turned to run, but she was still targeted by a female vampire. The female vampire chased after her. The woman saw no way to escape. She suddenly erupted into a force. The woman pushed the vampire down the stairs. In the end, it was impaled on a statue, but the scream she let out before dying disturbed the vampires on the dance floor. The trouble was just beginning. The woman's name was Zelda, and the man who invited her to the party was named Benny. He was a vampire who had lived for centuries. Benny thought his heart had long been silenced by time. However, one day, while he was out with his brother Theo, he happened to see a young woman. Benny felt his heart race, but before he could approach her, she had already disappeared from view. Benny felt regret about this. When his brother Theo saw him like this, he decided to give Benny something to do. So Theo secretly signed Benny up for a boxing match. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, Benny was sent to the ring by his brother. His opponent turned out to be that young woman. Benny was momentarily at a loss. However, Zelda had no idea what Benny was thinking. She only felt that Benny was particularly weak and lacked masculinity. As the referee announced the start, Zelda took the initiative. She landed a punch on Benny. Though he had lived for centuries, Benny had never encountered anything like this. For a moment, he was powerless against Zelda's blows. However, as blood surged, his vampire lineage was awakened, and all his abilities were enhanced. The previously unfavorable situation began to turn around. He relied solely on brute strength, so it was expected that Benny would lose. However, even so, Benny was still very happy. In the end, Benny made an unexpected move. He actually sneaked into Zelda's room. At this moment, she was taking a shower. Perhaps it was destiny. Zelda's mind was filled with images of Benny, so when Benny suddenly appeared, she thought it was her imagination. Afterwards, as they delved deeper into conversation, they got to know each other better. Benny shared how cold he had once been, and how he had become warm after meeting Zelda. Zelda teased him, calling him like an old monster from years past. Benny actually admitted calmly that he had lived for over 300 years, but such nonsense. Zelda certainly wouldn't believe it. Their conversation didn't last long. When Benny's brother Theo appeared, Benny had no choice but to leave with him. But in that brief moment together, Zelda had already developed feelings for Benny, so she quietly followed behind to watch. However, Zelda witnessed something that made her furious. Benny was actually mingling with countless young girls, along with his brother. He even warmly invited them to the ball. Zelda witnessed all of this, and she felt uncomfortable in her heart. Therefore, she came up with a brilliant idea. Zelda took advantage of the girl's distraction. She pretended not to see and touched her. Then, she seized the opportunity to take the invitation. The plan was perfect. Zelda looked at the address on the invitation. On the night of the ball, she quietly arrived at the venue. It was a very secluded estate. The overall style was quite eerie, combined with the nighttime environment and the surrounding vegetation. Zelda felt a sense of inexplicable fear, but to see Benny, she mustered her courage and approached the gate. Just then, the iron gate opened by itself, adding an eerie quality to everything around. After passing through the gate, Zelda walked for several more minutes. She spotted a building glowing with blue light. Clearly, that was the venue for the ball. Zelda walked straight toward the light, and soon, she arrived at the ball. At this moment, there were many people here, and there was hardly any free space. Zelda could only squeeze through the crowd. After an unknown amount of time, she finally found Benny. However, upon seeing Zelda, Benny suddenly became serious. He immediately pushed Zelda away. Benny kept urging her to leave quickly, as if something terrifying was about to happen. Zelda didn't understand why he had changed so drastically, but she hurriedly left anyway. Therefore, Zelda was able to witness that terrifying scene in the corner of the ball. The other party also saw Zelda. Their eyes met, and Zelda realized something was wrong. She immediately ran away. The female vampire chased after her. They wove through the estate. The vampire woman seems to intentionally tease her prey. Zelda knew this couldn't go on, so she gathered her courage and fought with the woman. Zelda had practiced boxing since she was young, and ordinary men were no match for her, let alone just a woman. The other woman didn't expect that Zelda would dare to fight back. Before she could react, Zelda seized the opportunity and pushed the woman down from the upper floor. She landed right on the sword held by the statue. If nothing unexpected happened, she was surely dead. Seeing that she had killed someone, Zelda quickly fled the eerie and terrifying estate. Not long after, the staff inside the estate discovered the dead woman's body. Theo instantly broke down in tears. The woman turned out to be his girlfriend. They had been together for centuries. Now his girlfriend had been brutally murdered. Theo vowed to seek revenge. The family was also emotionally charged. Only Benny remained silent. He has always had a bad feeling in his heart. Benny suspected that the killer might be Zelda. He was caught in a dilemma between his family and his lover. Of course, Theo and the others were unaware of this. They cremated the woman's body. Vampires burn when exposed to sunlight, and eventually turn to ashes. Even the dead body was the same. Thus, the vampires developed a unique ritual. They placed the bodies of the dead under the sun. Before long, with the first rays of sunlight, the bodies completely turned to ashes. Theo's hatred was completely ignited. In the following days, Theo was not himself at all. He constantly missed his deceased girlfriend. Theo even had thoughts of self-harm. The sun burned his skin, but it couldn't suppress the pain in Theo's heart. Just then, Theo realized that those people were all invited by the invitation, so he could start from this angle to find the real culprit. At this time, Zelda finally escaped back home. The bloodstains on her attracted the attention of her father and brother. Through questioning, they learned about Zelda's experiences that night. Her father looked grave, and then he revealed a shocking piece of news. Although the family appeared to run an underground boxing ring, but these are all disguises. Their true identity was vampire hunters. Zelda was astonished by this secret. Originally, she and Benny only faced a racial barrier, but now there was an obstacle of identity and stance. She found it hard to accept. However, since Zelda knew the secret, she needed to take on the responsibility. In the following days, her father and brother trained Zelda to make her a qualified vampire hunter. In the shortest time possible, Zelda looked at the scene of blood splattering in front of her. She felt uncomfortable inside, and because Zelda was always busy training, Benny couldn't contact her at all. He was very worried about Zelda. Benny actually sneaked into Zelda's place again. Coincidentally, she was taking a shower at that moment. Zelda looked at Benny, who suddenly appeared, and she felt a complex mix of emotions. Zelda didn't know how to respond to him in terms of her identity, but for Benny's safety, she decided to hide him first. After all, Zelda already knew that her father and brother were vampire hunters. If they discovered him, Benny would be dead. It was this kind act that allowed Benny to escape a disaster. As soon as Zelda's father left, Benny couldn't suppress his feelings any longer. He asked Zelda why she had been missing during this period. He learned that Zelda's family were actually vampire hunters, and that she was the one who killed Theo's girlfriend, creating a barrier between them. Even though Benny said it was okay, he knew his brother would never give up. If they really wanted to be together, they would have to face countless difficulties. After returning home, Benny lost his composure again. He didn't know how to handle this relationship. Benny didn't notice his cousin Melissa appearing nearby. He wasn't surprised, as Melissa often clung to him. Sure enough, this time Melissa wanted to hear a bedtime story. Benny coaxed his cousin to sleep as usual, but he seemed unaware that Melissa's feelings were not so simple. Or perhaps he did notice, but he didn't want to respond. On the other side, Zelda returned to her previous life after Benny left. Zelda practiced how to kill vampires relentlessly. Zelda's father saw her becoming more skilled, and believed the time had come. He instructed her to lead the way to the vampire estate. They planned to take advantage of the daytime to deal with that group of vampires. Although Zelda felt a bit reluctant, she had to comply with her father and brother's request. Zelda could only take the two of them there. According to them, vampires were very weak, and in a state of slumber during the day. Even if they were discovered, they could simply hide in the sunlight. So, they charged straight in. Not long after, they arrived at the place where Benny and the others lived. They looked at the blood bags in the fridge. The vampire identity was beyond doubt. Zelda's brother immediately punctured all of them. Such evil things should not exist in this world. After that, they began searching the interior of the room. They prepared to eliminate those vampires, but they found nothing. This was clearly illogical. Could it be that vampires could move during the day? Just as they were puzzled, Zelda suddenly made a discovery. She came to Benny's room. Zelda saw a photo on the table. In the photo was a young woman she didn't recognize. Zelda was drawn in and paused to look. She unexpectedly discovered a girl under Benny's bed. This girl was actually Benny's cousin. However, Zelda was unaware of her identity. From her appearance, she looked like just a teenage girl, but in reality, the girl was over 300 years old. Zelda thus let her guard down. She even took off her hood. she asked the girl for her name, and if it weren't for her father and brother arriving just in time, she would have been ambushed and killed by the girl. Zelda saw the terrifying fangs on her mouth, and for the first time, she truly realized how terrifying vampires can be. Under the control of her father and brother, the girl was almost immobilized. The execution that followed was handed over to Zelda. As she looked at the girl's beautiful exterior, Zelda hesitated once again. Just then, several cars suddenly drove into the manor. It turned out to be Benny and others. It turned out that just a short while ago, they were called away by their mother. The reason why Benny's family has been able to hide in the crowd for hundreds of years and still hasn't been exposed is mainly due to this mother. She owns a medical industry under her name. She publicly claims to be conducting research to conquer cancer. During this period, a large amount of blood was naturally collected. Some of this blood is sent to the manor. This is why the refrigerators are filled with medical blood bags. However, during the ball, Theo fed on a girl, thinking she was just an ordinary person, but he didn't expect her to be the daughter of a high-ranking government official. Now, the girl died inexplicably at the ball. The other party naturally will not give up easily, so the mother called the two brothers away. However, sunlight is still poison to them, so, to avoid being burned by the sun, the family stays outside always dressed in layers, and all the windows of the medical building are made of special glass, filtering out the burning rays of sunlight. Theo and the others left their mother. They didn't immediately return to the manor. They found the police officer in charge of the case. Based on the information they had gathered before, this person has a sister who is currently terminally ill. Her life is in danger. Therefore, Theo proposed a deal to him, hoping that this person could investigate the killer of his girlfriend, and then frame that person as the murderer of the official's daughter. As a reward, he would treat the police officer's sister and gain a longer life. After Theo and the police officer struck a deal, they then returned to the manor. On the way, Benny's heart was filled with inexplicable emotions. He knew the identity of the killer, yet Benny couldn't abandon his family. Torn between hesitation and conflict, they had already returned to the manor. Before they even entered, they caught a strong whiff of blood in the air. They saw shattered blood bags. The two immediately understood that something was wrong at home. Benny immediately thought of his cousin who stayed behind. He quickly went to check. Benny only saw his cousin in a terrified state and scattered items around. Through questioning, he found out, while Benny and the others were away, a group of masked individuals broke into the estate. Luckily, Theo and the others returned in time. Otherwise, she would have surely met a terrible fate today. Benny knows those people could be Zelda and others, but he couldn't reveal this truth. However, even though Benny didn't say anything, Theo still managed to find some clues. A cross pendant was left at the scene. This is obviously worn by vampire hunters. This made Benny anxious. On the other side, although Zelda failed to kill the vampire, however, her father didn't blame her. Instead, he revealed a secret. Zelda's mother was actually killed by a vampire. That's why he became a hunter. Upon hearing this news, she was shocked. Zelda was even more unsure how to act, facing the vampire Benny. Benny was unaware of her situation. That evening, he came to find Zelda to ask about what happened during the day. During this time, he had been seen by Zelda's father. Fortunately, Benny pretended to be a journalist, investigating the life of a female boxer, managing to deceive him. However, as soon as he saw Zelda, Benny hadn't reacted yet. When he was ambushed by her, Benny didn't understand why. At this moment, Zelda was still full of hesitation. She first mentioned her mother's murder. Upon hearing this, Benny immediately stated that it definitely wasn't done by his family. To prove himself, he even took Zelda to a hospital. She met an old lady here. This person vaguely could see some traces of her youth, but what shocked Zelda the most was the appearance of the old lady. She surprisingly looked very similar to a photo Zelda had seen. According to Benny, this old lady was his girlfriend from many years ago. They had always maintained a romantic relationship. Benny believed this was enough to show he harbored almost no hostility towards humans. However, Zelda had seen with her own eyes before Theo killing a girl. Thus, the guard in her heart only relaxed slightly towards Benny. Through her conversation with the old lady, she learned the lady had always deeply loved Benny. Even though they could never be together, she held no resentment in her heart. Even more, the old lady expressed great happiness, as Benny had someone to share his inner thoughts with again. Benny was also touched by this. He hadn't expected the girl he had unintentionally delayed for a lifetime, and still considered him until the end. A feeling of guilt arose in Benny's heart. He recalled the scene of being with a woman in his mind. Zelda naturally was unaware of all this. After hearing the old lady's words, Zelda simply nodded. The barrier in her heart towards Benny also crumbled in the old lady's words. She finally stopped hiding her feelings. Zelda expressed her true feelings to Benny. Benny took her to the company building. Under the witness of the myriad stars, they made a lifelong vow. They had their first in-depth conversation. As Zelda's blood flowed into Benny's mouth, they accepted a part of each other, perhaps influenced by the old lady. Benny transferred all his inner guilt to Zelda. So, not long after, they exchanged rings and became husband and wife. They crossed racial and identity barriers. However, this was not accepted by society, especially not accepted by Theo. After several days of investigation, he had obtained information about the cross, which belonged to Zelda's brother. So the identities of those three individuals were now clear. They were the three individuals from the boxing gym. Theo's pent-up anger finally had a target for release. He came alone to the boxing gym. Theo wanted to challenge Zelda's brother and father. Vampire hunters use solar energy, but they are not as strong in hand-to-hand combat against vampires, even though they have undergone specialized training. The opponents are also skilled in combat techniques. They were beaten badly like punching bags. However, Theo was not satisfied, because the culprit Zelda was not present. So, shortly after, Zelda, who had just finished her wedding, was inexplicably kidnapped. When she woke up again, Zelda found herself in a mansion. Theo stood not far away. Zelda immediately understood that the situation had been exposed, so she did not communicate with him either. Zelda took the opportunity to break a wooden coat hanger. She prepared to fight the opponent. At this moment, Benny arrived just in time. He asked his elder brother to release Zelda, but Theo was filled with anger. He clearly would not agree. However, to save face for his younger brother, he still agreed. But when Zelda wanted to leave, she learned another shocking piece of news. Theo had already handed over her father and brother to the police in charge of the investigation. If she dared to leave today, then the two would be framed as the killers of the official's daughter, and they would surely die. Zelda had to choose between herself and her family. Ultimately, she could only be forced to stay in the mansion. Benny thought his elder brother's actions were despicable, so he argued against his brother at the family meeting. Theo's way of doing things. He begged his mother to allow Zelda to leave. However, to Benny's surprise, the most vehement reaction came from his niece. However, what was strange was that nobody present refuted the niece's opinion, because she was the true decision-maker of this family, the vampire progenitor. Centuries ago, the identity of the niece's family as vampires was discovered, leading to the execution of all of them by the local residents, except for the girl who managed to escape. Later on, the girl sought refuge with distant noble relatives, who happened to be Benny's family. They took in this girl out of pity at that time, they completely unaware that this would completely change their lives. As they lived together, the niece gradually developed feelings for Benny, but she never revealed them. This guy also seemed to have a wooden head. He just kept helping the girl, yet never made any demands, until one day, the girl jokingly asked if she could become Benny's bride. He never thought about it, the unforeseeable dangers this would bring. At that moment, Benny casually agreed. The niece took it as true. That very night, she secretly dripped her own fresh blood into Benny's mouth. He was infected and turned into a vampire. The niece thought that this way, she could be with Benny forever, but she didn't anticipate that the newly turned Benny was still unstable. He staggered out of the room. Benny recklessly attacked the servants in the mansion, and then he turned on his own family. Theo was transformed into a vampire in this way, and at that time, his girlfriend was serving as a maid in the mansion, and she naturally couldn't escape. Overnight, everyone turned into vampires. For hundreds of years, Benny still didn't fulfill his initial promise. The niece's heart had long been filled with resentment. Now, finally having Zelda as an outlet for her frustrations, she wouldn't let Zelda leave easily. She even provided Theo with many clues. With the girl's support, Zelda had no hope of leaving this behind completely. Therefore, Benny made a shocking move. He actually betrayed the family. Benny ran away with Zelda. Theo naturally couldn't let his enemy go, so he chased after them. The group arrived at the door. The sun blazed outside. Benny couldn't leave, but if he stayed in the mansion, under the premise of betraying the family, his fate wouldn't be good either. Just then, Zelda had an idea. She tore down the nearby curtains, wrapping Benny tightly in them. Under Theo's furious gaze, the two escaped from the house. However, what they didn't expect was that the niece actually followed them out, grabbing Benny's curtains and refusing to let go. Eventually, she lost her life forever in order to keep her lover. However, Theo definitely wouldn't give up. Since he couldn't catch Zelda, Theo started taking out his anger on the two captives, locking them in coffins, intending to burn them alive, as a sacrifice for his deceased loved one. However, Theo didn't anticipate that Zelda and the others who had escaped actually returned. Seeing them return, he immediately teamed up with the police, prepared to deal with them all. The battle between the two sides erupted. If Benny hadn't opened the coffins in time to rescue Zelda's father and brother, their situation would have been even more dire. After a fierce battle, although they managed to escape the mansion with difficulty, during the recent battle, Zelda's father unfortunately was shot. Seeming to realize his life was in jeopardy, Zelda's father once again revealed a secret. Zelda's mother didn't die at the hands of a vampire, but at his hands. Initially, the father unexpectedly discovered that his wife was a vampire. This led to conflicts between the two. In order to protect the children from being eaten, he drove away Zelda's mother. However, after that, Zelda's father didn't care much about the two children. As a result, the mother took the opportunity to steal them away, and by the time he discovered it, they were nowhere to be found. After an unknown period of searching, Zelda's father finally found traces of them somewhere, but he only saw the figure of Zelda's brother. Mistakenly believing that Zelda had been killed, he angrily killed his wife. But just then, Zelda returned home after shopping. It was then that he realized his mistake, and Zelda's father buried it all deep in his heart. Now knowing the truth, Zelda couldn't stop her tears from flowing, finding the news so heavy that it was difficult for her to accept. At this moment, Benny's mother unexpectedly arrived, causing them to be on high alert. However, Benny noticed something amiss. His mother looked extremely sad, and it was later revealed through questioning that after they left, his older brother Theo had committed suicide. It turns out that after Benny and the family fell out, Theo felt guilty for not avenging his girlfriend. Theo went to the graveyard to remember his girlfriend, but for some reason, he saw a phantom of her words touching Theo's heart. Thinking about Benny's actions, Theo seemed to understand something, and he made a shocking move as well. Theo bid his mother a final farewell, and then walked into the sunlight. During this time, despite feeling the burning pain, he showed no fear, because the loved one was right there. By the time the mother noticed something was wrong, Theo had already turned into a pile of ashes. Tears streamed down the old woman's face. She had lost her eldest son, and now only Benny remained. That's why she had come. At this moment, Zelda had already learned the truth about her mother. She decided to let go of hatred and leave with Benny, but her older brother didn't see it that way. Years of training, all aimed at eliminating vampires. How could he easily give up now? Therefore, Zelda's brother also made a shocking move. The old woman watched as her son was killed by the other. Her spirit instantly shattered. Her angry roar tore through the night sky. Benny's mother swiftly launched an attack. Before anyone could react, she first bit into Zelda's brother's neck. Urgently, she didn't spare Zelda either. Benny watched as his girlfriend was about to be killed by his mother, but he could only collapse here. All those beautiful dreams all vanish like the nearby Ferris wheel slowly turning into bubbles. At the end of the story, after timely treatment, Zelda's father did not die. The others could only be buried deep underground, but he once again overlooked. In Zelda's grave, a hand broke through the soil. A new vampire descended once again. The film concludes here. Disastrous Love premiered in July this year. The plot of the film is very simple, but the twists and entanglements of love are portrayed very deeply. The final carnage is the finishing touch, vividly portraying the themes of family and love. In addition, the casting of the film is also very good, with a lineup of handsome men and beautiful women. It looks very pleasing to the eye. If you like my channel, please click subscribe.